They were people who were putting their lives on hold to attend to the deaths of these young people. Some of you who've been here for a little while might remember a former pastor who was here, Reverend Takaishi. He was here as the pastor 10 years ago when I joined this church, a little more than 10 years ago. And before coming to First in Summerfield, Taka served a church in the West Village of New York City. And he served there during the height of the AIDS crisis. That church was actually located right across the street from St. Vincent's Hospital, which was one of the only hospitals that was taking AIDS patients in those early days. I actually got to spend 5 years as an associate pastor of that same church years after Taka left. That church has always kind of hovered around 50% LGBTQ, and many of its old-timers had a lot of stories to tell about those days in the AIDS crisis in New York City. And when I asked Taka about what it was like to be in ministry in that place starting in 1986, that was his first year there, he would tell me stories about being one of the few faith communities that would conduct memorial services for those who had died of AIDS, and about how sensitive the dynamics could be at those services, how some of the deceased had never been able to come out to their families, how sometimes there were only a few people, just a handful of people at those services, or sometimes there were huge numbers of people, and even the families of the deceased would come, but sometimes they would sit as far as they could away from the deceased friends and longtime partner. But it was those friends and those partners, those few people sometimes who gathered to remember the dead, those perfect strangers sometimes who answered the call to provide hospice care to the young and dying. These were the courageous and compassionate souls that Mark Fairfield was referring to when he said these words that were so striking to me this week. People really moved to create together the conditions that would resist the vision of disposable humans. Whatever the complexities and fears and confusion of that epidemic, the LGBTQ community, especially the gay men of those days, were made to feel like disposable humans. Like their lives and their bodies and their relationships were without value, without rights, like they could be experimented on and then condemned to death in secret and isolated places. Like their annihilation did not rise to the level of crisis for our country. Disposable humans. I wonder if anyone here has ever been made to feel disposable. Blessed are the disposable humans, for they will be comforted and honored. Blessed are the sick, for a community will rise to tend to their sores and hold their trembling hands. Blessed are the early victims of AIDS, for their ashes will be thrown on the lawn of the White House, and whole social movements will rise to redeem their deaths. There's an idea in psychology called narrative theory. Narrative theory says that we come to understand and cope with the events of our lives through stories, through narrative. And changing those stories can be very impactful. Sometimes, and this is especially true for people on the margins, women, people of color, sometimes we are fed these stories in which we're just victims, or we're just support characters for other people's heroic stories. A story can go like this: woe is me, someone has power over me and they are making me suffer. And so now I'm waiting and begging for someone with power to save me from my suffering. But in narrative theory and narrative therapy, we can learn to develop these counter stories. These counter stories that undermine the dominant develop counter-stories, revolutionary stories in which we are agents of our own destiny, with the power to make change and to participate in a new world, a different world. A counter-story to woe is me might sound something like, blessed is me. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Hear how the narrative is turned around. The dominant story is a vision of disposable humans. The revolutionary counter-story is a story that resists the vision of disposable humans. The dominant story is a story of woe, that hundreds of thousands of young American gay men fell victim to AIDS in the late 1980s. The revolutionary counter-story is a story of blessedness, that LGBTQ people and their allies rapidly created incredible networks of community around dying young people, and they cared for their own intense grief, all while creating an activist movement for medical research that has saved countless lives. People really moved to create together the conditions that would resist the vision of disposable humans. When I heard that devastating term, disposable humans, this week, I thought of the visit that my husband and I took in December to the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. I thought about Echo Cole and Robert Walker, two sanitation workers in Memphis who were required to work on a day when rain was pouring down, flooding the streets in Memphis. Two black men who would have not been allowed to seek shelter from the downpour under white people's porticos, whose only shelter from the rain was riding in the back of the sanitation truck in Memphis, where the mayor refused to take old, dilapidated trucks out of service. And on February 1st, 1968, Echo Cole and Robert Walker were sheltering from the downpour in their truck. And the compactor malfunctioned and crushed their bodies. The city of Memphis refused to compensate their families for their deaths. And that proved to be the last straw for the sanitation workers of Memphis. Black men who came home every day from working with defective garbage tubs, who had to take off their clothes at the door while maggots fell off of them. Workers who received no overtime, no paid sick days, and no protections if they were injured on the job. Breadwinners who were paid 65 cents an hour, and whose families were on welfare and food stamps to survive. After Echo and Robert were killed by a Memphis sanitation truck, those workers who were done with being treated as less than human went on strike, carrying those iconic "I am a man" signs. And by the time the city of Memphis allowed the sanitation workers to unionize, a 16-year-old child had been killed by the police in the demonstrations. And of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself would be added to the death toll. He lost his life on the balcony of the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, where he was traveling to support the sanitation workers. Blessed are the sanitation workers, for they, in the words of Dr. King, reminded the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages. Blessed are the martyrs of the struggle, for the loss of their precious and irreplaceable lives. Trouble people to move, to create together the conditions that would resist the vision of disposable humans. Today, the Civil Rights Museum is holding a special photo exhibition. The photos are from this last June, when children stood outside the ICE offices in New York City, holding signs that read, "I am a child." When I think about resisting the vision of disposable humans, I think of all the activists at the border trying to provide food and water and legal assistance and just compassion and awareness for the migrants who are crossing the border today, people being treated as disposable humans. As a parent of a human, I can barely stomach to read another story about the thousands of children and parents who've been separated. When I think about resisting the vision of disposable humans, I think about this church and the dozens of other faith communities around the nation who are refusing to cooperate with evil, who are holding those at risk of deportation and family separation within our houses of worship. I think of the people like Dean, who walk every week into courthouses all over the state to accompany undocumented neighbors to their ICE check-ins and their court proceedings, telling the revolutionary counter-story that our immigrant neighbors themselves are not disposable. To the contrary, they are critical to our families and our communities. They, in fact, are our family and our community. And we will do everything we can to prevent them from being silently disappeared from our lives. Blessed are those who migrate to live among us, for they invite our nation to be better. Blessed are the children, for their suffering will sit like a jagged rock in our stomachs, a lingering discomfort, a necessary humbling of our self-perceptions of righteousness, a provocation to repair something that has been ruptured. I am too young to have lived through the civil rights movement. And those of us who are too young, I think we get that movement packaged in our nice little children's books and our videos, our documentaries. And it is almost made to sound like the leaders of that movement knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly where they were going. Like they could see the roadmap before them. And I know that makes me feel like a total failure. When I'm in these movements and we're struggling for justice, but we're having these internal squabbles and we're getting this unexpected kind of pushback from people that we respect, and we're feeling like there's a defeat at every turn, we think we must be doing it wrong. Our civil rights heroes had it all figured out and we're just lost. But I have come to surmise that it may not have felt that way at the time. I just think of that stormy night when Dr. King gave his last sermon in Memphis. The sanitation strike had been going on for almost 2 months without result. There were factions of the movement that didn't believe in nonviolence. Violence had erupted. The National Guard had been called in. A child had died in the struggle, and Dr. King was being blamed for this. Dr. King was seriously considering not coming back to Memphis because of how complex the situation had become. But he came. And even though it was storming outside and he was very tired, he made it to a church where some dedicated sanitation workers were able to convince him to speak to them. But the story of that strike had not been written. Actually, the dominant story was that these struggling poor sanitation workers were violent and were laying their livelihoods down for rights that they didn't deserve and would never achieve. But that night, Dr. King got up and he did what he did best. He told them again the revolutionary counter-story. He said, "Now we are poor people. Individually, we are poor when you compare us with white society in America." But then he reminded reminded them that collectively, African Americans were actually rich. Collectively, he said, we have an annual income of more than $30 billion a year, which is more than all the exports of the United States and more than the national budget of Canada. Did you know that? That's power right there if we know how to rule it. He said, we don't have to argue with anybody. We don't have to curse and go around acting bad with our words. We don't need any bricks and bottles. We don't need any Molotov cocktails. We just need to go around to these stores and to these massive industries in our country and say, God sent us by here to say that you're not treating God's children right. And we've come by here to ask you to make the first item on your agenda fair treatment where God's children are concerned. Now, if you're not prepared to do that, we do have an agenda that we must follow, and our agenda calls for withdrawing economic support from you. See how we turned around that story? Blessed are the revolutionaries, for they will not wait for the powerful to be beneficent to the disposable. No, they will find the creative power of God which is within them to participate in the salvation of the world. Blessed are those who have been to the mountaintop, for they will come down into our confusing and messy and battle-worn moments and remind us of the revolutionary stories of the Promised Land. They will remind us that our faith tells us that God is at work bringing those who are deemed most disposable in the world into the most excellent place, a place flowing with milk and honey where we and our children can thrive. Because none of us is disposable. Each of us is nothing less than the children of the divine. God's love and glory dwell within the most vulnerable and oppressed parts of us, and we will live our lives as powerful agents in the counter-story of justice until all God's children are free. May it be so.